Well, you can obviously understand extended bracket narratives. So if we talk about this being the low of the bracket here, which is obviously the case, and if we talk about this being the high of the bracket there, which is obviously the case, and then we look at the distance between the high of the bracket to the high of the price, which is that distance there, the high was there. So that was the high of the bracket there. So I can take that from the low of the bracket, and I can start finding myself a price. Does that make sense to a buy at 60s there, yes or no? Makes perfect sense to a buy right there. Now that's one way we can do it, and the reason why we do it this way is because this is a standard balance area in here. It's a very, very obvious normal distribution, isn't it? So when we look at this as a normal distribution, you can see it is almost a perfect normal distribution here, isn't it? It's almost perfect. So when we see that normal perfect distribution, obviously it developed out a little bit lower down at this stage here. You can see just how perfect that distribution is. So if you think about the distribution from the POC to the high price here, you see that? So the POC to the high price as far as distributions are concerned, and then you look at that distribution and say, well, if that's a normal distribution, I would expect to go from the POC to the same low price, and you draw that on the charts there, you can see that the POC to the low price takes you pretty close to where you're actually based in terms of that buy opportunity. It's not far off the two measures, is it? The two different ways of doing the measurement here. And what you're expecting, of course, is simply that that should set up that type of normal distribution phase. Yeah, that's what you're expecting. And obviously, if you take that POC a little bit further, you'll see that that's actually not just what you were expecting. That's exactly what you got. You got that perfect overall profile narrative. It was a classic case of finishing off a profile with an exhaustion print at the bottom edges. And obviously, when we got that exhaustion print at the bottom edges, we got this huge spike volume, which ends an exhaustion print. And obviously, in line with our value lines, you can see exactly what happened. You couldn't really make it up. It was so good. If we look at that trade there, what we're looking for is the red line spiking higher. You can see that the black line even spikes higher against the blue line. Now, Cliff was looking at that the other day, so I'm surprised Cliff wasn't shouting about this one, because this is as good as it gets, because the black line actually went up as the blue line went down on that occasion. And that is so good. It's unbelievable. So when we look at that, it's going in the exact opposite direction, which it very rarely does. When you look at these the black line and the blue line in isolation, I'll take these other two off for a second. When you look at the black and the blue line in isolation, it very rarely goes in the opposite direction. And especially when it goes in the opposite direction at these kind of price areas here, you think to yourself, my God, that is brilliant. That really is a brilliant opportunity to make a lot of money. So buying into that 60, to me, seemed to be a bit of a no-brainer. And we went 60 to high price of 40 for $800 on a 1-minute chart, guys. It took us 3 minutes. 3 minutes to go from 60s to nearly 50s. $800, guys, in 3 minutes off of that little buy trade. Massive volume, massive lean. Let's take a look at that candle itself. Let's take a look at the candle itself in terms of its tape, because it's a nice thing to look back on and just understand just how gloriously good that trade was. And it was a little bit special. Now, one of the things you'll be able to recognize is that when the price dropped down, you can see that when the price dropped down, here it is here, 1432, you can see, number one, we've got that delta extreme. So there's the delta extreme indicator that came from the conversation that I had with Greg about delta and the extreme, the idea of that price getting an extreme read and getting jammed at the extremes. And so you can see Greg's done a great job of being able to show it by this pink arrow at the very bottom edge here. You can see that there is most of the sell volume is here around about the 70 print. See that? the gap between the 85 and this selling at 70 is almost empty of buyers. Take a look. 1 buyer, 3 buyers, 4 buyers, 7 buyers, 3 buyers, none, none, 1, 2, 3, 6, 0, 0, 3, 0, 2, 0, 1. See how there's no buyers? But there's no opportunity for you to buy against that, is there? I mean, you'd have to be an absolute nugget to try and buy at that stage, so that's good. So what happens? Well, you can see that the volume declines as the price drops, doesn't it? You see that? The volume on the sell side, you see how the size of the bars? The volume on the sell side declines. The volume on the buy side builds. How glorious is that little graphic right there, guys? So when the volume on the buy side builds, you know you've got a bottom edge. You see this blue box? That's absorption. So when we go above that, you say, you know what? There's the buy trade right there. They made one last attempt in here, lots of volume in this area from the sellers and the buyers, and then it was good night Vienna, right? It was simply just a case of ripping it higher, and you can see these absorptions at higher prices. A good story of absorption at higher prices. This price has got nowhere to go. This market is going north. And that was your buy trade, guys. 117.60 after you saw buyers coming in. Now that gives you a little bit of room because these sellers might still be there at 70s. So you need to get that 10 ticks room, and just in case they come back out again and sell at 70s. You can see we came back up into 70 and the volume by the sellers was actually dropping off, not building, dropping. And that opened the door to this very easy swing away from this price, guys. Beautiful order flow behind a beautiful trade narrative and a beautiful outcome. As I said, nearly $1,000 in 3 minutes. Crazy, 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 crazy. We love a good bit of crazy, guys. We love a good bit of crazy.